Hello, everyone. So we are finally here. We are going to be talking about the road to the Civil War, and this is part one of that discussion. So, pictured is John C. Calhoun. We have talked about him before. We talked about him with the nullification crisis. He was a war hawk before the War of 1812. A senator from South Carolina, was the vice president, resigned that position, and went back to his Senate seat. Anyways, so at this point, there are issues that are coming into play. You have the growing pro-slavery movement, everything that goes along with that, as well as the abolition movement, the movement to end slavery. Then you have the battle between the states and the federal government, and as far as what states have the right to do by the law, and then you have federal power being questioned as well. And then you have the growing sense of sectionalism, that favoring your region of the country over or instead of the nation as a whole. This question of slavery was not new, as we well know. So, we're going to kind of refer to a few things we've previously talked about in this class. Like, first of all, you had the Northwest Ordinance. Part of that was in this new territory that was gained at that point, it did not allow slavery. Then you also have the Three-Fifths Compromise. That was the compromise where three-fifths of a state's slaves could count as far as representation is concerned. Then you have the Slave Trade Compromise. There was a special committee that met together, and Congress had the right to ban the slave trade, but this wasn't until 1800. And so they extended this date to 1808. So this again is part of that question with slavery. And then you have the Missouri Compromise. Remember, that was the debate over the entry of Missouri. In the end, Missouri came in as a slave state, Maine as a free state. Maine and Missouri would enter at the same time to keep the balance, and then that 3630 line would determine the future of slavery in those territories. So you had three key positions on slavery. You had pro-slavery, anti-slavery, and then people who did not want it to expand. So it could remain in the places and the territories where it currently was. They did not want it to expand. You have, again, this fight between states' rights and federal powers. So remember, we talked about federalism. You would have the federal, state, and the local governments sharing power here. The 10th Amendment is another piece added on to that, where all powers not given to the federal government by the Constitution are reserved by the states and the people. And that is meant to make sure the federal government does not just snatch those powers and does not become too powerful. So then you have nullification. Remember, we talked about this with the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions after the Alien and Sedition Acts, so that the states had the right to nullify laws. This came up again with the tariff crisis with John C. Calhoun. Remember that? And Andrew Jackson. So states felt that they had the right to nullify laws if they believed that it violated the rights of the people. So as you can see here, take a look at this map. The North and the South are growing a lot differently. You have, obviously, if you look in green, that represents cotton. Cotton was referred to as King Cotton for a reason. Cotton was king. They were making so much money off of cotton in the South, and not just from the United States, but from other countries. In the orange, you have corn and wheat. The red is dairy cattle, hay. That grayish, that lighter gray color is sugar. The bluish is rice, and the darker gray is tobacco. So you can tell just all over the nation, things look different culturally as far as society is concerned, and with their economics obviously ties into these different industries that were prominent in their region. With this growing sectionalism, let's just kind of go through this. And we have talked about this before. First of all, in the North, you had a more industrial based economy. The South was based around agriculture. That's one reason why slave labor was important to them. They felt that it held up the economy. And immigrant labor was important in the North because it would help power those big industries with those people working at, unfortunately, low wages. Not many slaves in the North, and that was decreasing sharply as time went on and as the abolition movement grew. In the South, you had roughly 4 million slaves in the South, so that's a big part of their population. In the North, you had smaller farms, and these typically were owned by a family, if not maybe two. Then you had these large scale plantations in the South, and that's where you would see the majority of slaves where they would live. The South did not like tariffs. We've talked about this before. They had to pay these, yet it did not benefit them as directly as in the North. So they are pro tariff. We've talked about the North is they have a strong moral opposition to slavery. There was the epicenter of the abolition movement, and in the South, we talked about the pro-slavery argument in the South, and in the South, you had that they felt the economic dependence on slavery, and in the North, they had economic opposition to slavery. As you can see here, I have the Missouri Compromise line. Don't ask why it does that. But this Missouri Compromise line, it essentially, I just have that here to show you where it was. But as we expand more, this leads to even more conflict because as more states are going to enter the Union, as we get more territory, the big question is it going to be a free or slave state? This Mexican cession, this land that was gained, it had territory, and we'll go back above and below the Missouri Compromise line, which is in red. So, will there be slavery allowed? The Wilmot Proviso, and this was in 1846, it was designed to eliminate slavery within the land acquired from the Mexican-American War. So basically, there were some people who feared the addition of a pro-slave territory, and so the proviso is named after Pennsylvania Congressman David Wilmot, and he proposed his amendment to the bill. And so basically, the measure was blocked by a Southern-dominated Senate. However, it was also approved by the House of Representatives, and this was scary for the Southern states. Even though it was blocked in the Senate, it was initially approved in the House of Representatives. So to the Southern states, this was scary. So you also have the gold rush, and this leads more and more people out to the West. So this was in 1848. They discover gold at Sutter's Mill in California. In 1849, the news travels, and you see a rush for people to come out, and they want their shot at finding gold. And so these are known as 49ers. And so this makes the population explode in what will be California. And so they achieve statehood very, very quickly, much quicker than other states. And so there's a big debate about whether it's going to enter as a free state or a slave state. So there will be a major compromise that's reached. However, due to everything we're talking about today and a plethora of other reasons, we are already on the way to war at this point. So that is it for this video. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.